Well, this one, this is like the El Salvador of the 70s.
70s, okay.
Yeah, clean, simple. In my first book on coffee, characterized as a kind of concluding sentence in my section on El Salvador, I said, a coffee for the silent majority. People weren't manifesting much in the political world. This is one of those coffees you say, well, it's balanced, but it doesn't have too much to balance. But it's pleasant, clean. There's a kind of aromatic wood, but not wildly aromatic, not powerfully aromatic. Just a pleasant, yes, yeah, definitely. Simpler in the sense that the aromatics are flattened out a bit. I guess the structure, it's not as exciting either. There's not as much range of sensation.
Is it fair to say that in the 70s that the specialty coffee industry was developing, but not at the forefront of a grower's mind?
Oh no, there was almost no relationship, very little, between the roasters and the producers. In the 70s, we took names for our coffee off of the coffee bags. And I think a lot of times people didn't even know what the name meant.
Right.
On the coffee bags. So that's interesting. For El Salvador, there are none of those famous names like Guatemala Antigua or Mexico Oaxaca or some of those names that came off of coffee bags and had all this romance. I can't remember any El Salvador region or epithet or name. Well, I think I can toast now. Here's to you. Let's trust that there's more in the cup than in the nose. No, there isn't. Nothing that would call attention either in a negative or positive sense in the cup, I think, or in the nose. And there's not much acidy brightness, but there's enough so it's alive. And the aromatic notes, there's a kind of a quiet fruit, maybe dried fruit of some kind. Yeah, very clearly. There's way back in there, there's some chocolate, I think. Not much caramel, but more chocolate. No. A little bit. Maybe I can find some floral notes. Carnation, maybe, a kind of quiet flower aroma, but not much. The wood, which is a kind of a pleasantly aromatic wood. A fresh lumberyard wood. But I'm getting, particularly in the finish, notice the finish is very clean too. I'm getting a distinct kind of raisiny fruit or prune. The finish is quite pleasant, isn't it? It's very nice. Round, clean, has some richness to it.
Oh, I'll take that. I can't think of anything I don't like in it. It's just, I suppose if I were to be a critic, I'd say I want a little more.
This, again, reminds me of those El Salvadors that we all tasted in the 70s.
Is this a blending coffee? Do you think this would be used for
blends?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
In fact, I did consulting for a company, not the company that produced coffee in the United States, but produced coffee in Asia and Europe. And we tended to use El Salvador's as the highlight coffee in our standard blends. In other words, that El Salvador we tasted first. You could get these at a good price. You could get these lively, sweet, kind of with a little bit of fruit and floral, and coffees that didn't call attention to themselves in other respects. They had a kind of a low acidities. In those days, the standard blend would be Brazil as the base coffee, Brazil dry process, Colombia for acidity, power, and body. And then you wanted some coffee, usually a Central America, but increasingly people used Ethiopia, to kind of give it a little liveliness, pick it up with some. This coffee would not be that coffee, but the previous one would be. Well, let's see.
All right, let's find out
what we have here.
I think I know, but I know the name. This is PT's. PT's Coffee. I think they're in Kansas.
Yeah.
Topeka, Kansas. Am I right?
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
Let me see. Oh my gosh, I think it's on the back of the bag.
But this is a very distinguished coffee because it's not only from an excellent, outstanding roasting company, but it's SL28, which is a variety from Kenya that I assume has been planted since, in the last decade or so.
Right.
And I don't know what La Villa is, probably a farm or something.
And they're claiming it's a light roast, which I would agree with, washed, and of course the SL28.
The SL28, as after the revelation of Geshe and how the importance of variety, both in terms of how coffee tastes, but also in terms of publicity and marketing, variety has become very important in distinguishing a coffee. And SL28 is the variety. It's a Bourbon-based variety, came from Bourbon heritage, and of course it's the coffee that's most associated with the distinctive Kenya taste, which is a kind of a sweet tart berry, black currant or blackberry. Basically, the descriptors fit the SL28. I'm not sure that the coffee fits the descriptors, though. The first one we had, definitely, not closer.
Yeah, it seems like if I were to compare it to Kenya's I've had, it's a lot lighter in all the
In
taste.
presence.
I mean, I've had some powerful Kenyas.
Of course, yeah, it's famous for its power. This could be grown at lower elevations than Kenyas are, for example, so that would kind of lead it to be less intense. But I wouldn't know what to attribute. I'd just say maybe the trees were too young. Maybe they didn't just planted them 5 years ago and they haven't reached their maturity, or the elevation isn't there, or who knows, the variety may have gotten diluted in some way. I have no idea. But a very quiet, balanced cup that I would not associate particularly with SL28.
So you wouldn't have guessed this?
No. The first one, had I known SL28 was a possibility, I would have guessed that would have been a likely candidate for Cup A. But Cup B, you can't tell too much, really, what's going on. And pleasant, yeah. Go back to it now. The cup. It's gotten a lot better. This is typical of what happens if you get a really fine coffee in the first cup. The next one, the white one kind of raises its head in the shadow of the previous. Now that I just taste this cooling on its own, it's a very lovely cup. It's very balanced. It has a very smooth brightness. The acidity is very present and lively, but it's very smooth. Again, the flavor notes are limited. So I probably, if I had to offer a judgment of this coffee now, I would say that it has a wonderfully balanced and vibrant, quietly vibrant structure, but that the aromatics are limited. Pleasant but limited.
Please like and subscribe if you want to see more shows like this.